Your 401k balance shows $387,000. You've been contributing faithfully for 20 years. You feel like you're doing everything right. But what if I told you that simple mistakes you're making right now, mistakes you probably don't even know you're making, could cost you 150,000, 200,000, or even 300,000 by the time you retire? Not through market crashes or bad luck, but through preventable errors that are silently draining your retirement savings year after year. The shocking reality is that most Americans are making at least one of five critical 401k mistakes. These aren't minor optimization issues. These are fundamental errors that compound over decades, creating massive differences in retirement outcomes. Two people with identical incomes and identical contribution rates can end up with retirement accounts that differ by hundreds of thousands of dollars simply because one avoided these mistakes and the other didn't. We are on a mission to reach 10,000 subscribers to build a community that is aware of these financial shifts. If that resonates with you, hit subscribe. What I find so deeply troubling about these mistakes is how easily preventable they are. We're not talking about sophisticated financial strategies that require expert knowledge. We're talking about basic decisions that anyone can get right if they simply understand the consequences. Yet financial literacy around 401ks remains shockingly low, and the retirement industry has little incentive to educate people because in many cases, these mistakes benefit the financial institutions managing your money. Let me tell you, what I've discovered by analyzing these five mistakes is that they represent some of the largest wealth transfers in America, from workers to financial companies, from employees to employers, and from your future self to your current self. Understanding and avoiding these mistakes is the single highest return financial decision most people can make. The first and most devastating mistake is leaving free money on the table. Most employers offer a 401k match. They'll contribute money to your account if you contribute a certain percentage of your salary. A common formula is 50% of your contributions up to 6% of salary, which means if you contribute 6%, your employer adds another 3%. This is guaranteed, immediate, 100% return on your investment. Yet approximately 20% of employees who have access to a company match don't contribute enough to receive the full amount. Let me show you the real cost of this mistake with concrete numbers. You earn $75,000 per year. Your employer matches 50% of contributions up to 6% of salary. If you contribute the full 6%, that's $4,500 from you and $2,250 from your employer, $6,750 total annually. But let's say you only contribute 3% because money is tight. You're putting in $2,250 and your employer matches half of that, $1,125. You're leaving $1,125 per year on the table. Over 30 years, assuming 7% annual returns, that $1,025 annually would have grown to approximately $113,000. That's $113,000 you forfeited by not contributing enough to get the full match. You didn't lose this money to market declines or bad investments. You simply didn't claim free money your employer was offering. What I find particularly frustrating about this mistake is that it's often made by people who genuinely can't afford to contribute more or think they can't. They're living paycheck to paycheck and reducing take-home pay by another $100 or $200 per month feels impossible. But here's the reality. If your employer will give you $1,125 per year, you need to find a way to afford contributing the $2,250 necessary to get it, because no other financial move you can make will generate a guaranteed 50% or 100% immediate return. This reminds me of what behavioral economists call hyperbolic discounting, the tendency to value immediate rewards over much larger future rewards. The immediate reward of having slightly more in your paycheck today feels more tangible than the abstract future reward of $113,000 more in retirement. Your brain is literally wired to make the wrong decision here. The second layer of this mistake affects people who change jobs frequently. Many employers have a vesting schedule for their match. You don't fully own the employer contributions until you've been with the company for a certain number of years, often 3 to 6 years. If you leave before you're fully vested, you forfeit some or all of the employer contributions. Someone who changes jobs every 2 years and never stays long enough to vest is repeatedly forfeiting thousands of dollars. The second mistake is perhaps the most insidious because it's invisible to most people. You're paying fees on your 401k investments, and those fees are eating away at your returns year after year. The difference between a low-cost index fund charging 0.05% annually and an actively managed fund charging 1.5% annually might seem trivial. It's not. Over decades, this difference can cost you 30–40% of your retirement savings. Let me break down the math because this is where the shocking truth becomes clear. You have $100,000 in your 401k. Option A is a low-cost S&P 500 index fund charging 0.05% in fees. Option B is an actively managed large-cap fund charging 1.25% in fees. Both funds invest in large U.S. companies and have similar pre-fee returns of 8% annually. After 30 years with option A at 7.95% net returns, 8% minus 0.05% fees, your $100,000 grows to $130,000. After 30 years with option B at 6.75% net returns, 8% minus 1.25% fees, your $100,000 grows to $707,000. The difference is $323,000. You paid $323,000 in additional fees over 30 years by choosing the higher cost fund. What I find particularly outrageous is that in many cases, the actively managed fund doesn't even outperform the index fund before fees. Study after study shows that 80–90% of actively managed funds fail to beat their benchmark index over 10-year periods, so you're paying higher fees for worse performance. The problem is that most 401k participants have no idea what fees they're paying. The fees are deducted automatically from returns, so you never see them as a separate line item. Your statement might show that your account grew from $100,000 to $106,000 and you think you earned 6%. What you don't realize is that the underlying investments actually earned 7.5%, but 1.5% was deducted for fees. What makes this mistake particularly costly is that it's completely avoidable. Most 401k plans offer at least one low-cost index fund option. Target date funds have become increasingly common and often charge reasonable fees of 0, 10, 0.1 to 30%. But many participants either don't understand the importance of fees or they fall for the marketing of actively managed funds that promise to beat the market. The third mistake is treating your 401k as an emergency fund or piggy bank. Many 401k plans allow you to borrow against your balance or take hardship withdrawals under certain circumstances. While these features provide flexibility during financial emergencies, using them comes with substantial long-term costs that most people don't fully appreciate. Approximately 17 to 20% of 401k participants have an outstanding loan against their account at any given time. The appeal is obvious. You're borrowing from yourself, you pay yourself back with interest, and there are no credit checks or loan applications. But here's what actually happens when you take a 401k loan. You have $200,000 in your 401k. You need $30,000 for a home repair. You take a 401k loan, which you'll repay over 5 years at 5% interest. The money you borrowed is no longer invested in the market. Over those 5 years, let's say the market returns 8% annually. Your $30,000 would have grown to $44,080 if it had remained invested. Instead, you repaid $30,000 plus about $4,000 in interest to yourself, for a total of $34,000. The opportunity cost, the growth you gave up, is $10,080. But it's actually worse than that because when you repay the loan, you're using after-tax dollars. You paid income tax on the money you're using to repay the loan. And when you eventually withdraw that money in retirement, you'll pay income tax on it again. You've effectively paid tax twice on the same money. The real catastrophe happens when people leave their jobs with an outstanding 401k loan. Most plans require the loan to be repaid within 60 to 90 days of separation from employment. If you can't repay it, the outstanding balance is treated as a distribution. You'll pay income tax on the entire amount plus a 10% early withdrawal penalty if you're under 5912. That $30,000 loan suddenly generates a $9,000 tax bill. Your emergency $30,000 cost you $9,000 in taxes plus the $10,000 in lost growth, nearly $20,000 in total cost. What I find particularly troubling is research showing that once people take one 401k loan or withdrawal, they're significantly more likely to take another. It becomes a habit. They've mentally recategorized their 401k from untouchable retirement savings to available resource for current needs. This psychological shift is devastating to long-term retirement security. According to Vanguard Research 401k, participants who took withdrawals had account balances that were 25% lower after 10 years compared to similar participants who didn't take withdrawals. That's the true cost, not just the amount withdrawn, but the compounding growth that was permanently lost. The fourth mistake is setting your 401k investments poorly and then never adjusting them. This manifests in several ways: being too conservative and holding too much in stable value funds or bonds, being too aggressive and having 100% in stocks at age 60, or simply selecting investments randomly without any coherent strategy. Let me show you how costly poor asset allocation can be. Person A is 35 years old with a 30-year time horizon until retirement. They're risk averse, so they put their entire 401k in a stable value fund, earning 3% annually. Person B, same age and situation, invests in a balanced portfolio of 80% stocks and 20% bonds, earning 7% annually on average. They each contribute $10,000 per year for 30 years. Person A with 3% returns ends up with $476,000. Person B with 7% returns ends up with $945,000. Person A's excessive caution cost them $469,000. They have literally half the retirement savings they could have had. The opposite mistake is equally damaging. Person C is 60 years old with $500,000 in their 401k, all invested aggressively in 100% stocks. A market crash occurs, dropping 40% in value. Their account falls to $300,000. Even if the market recovers fully over the next 5 years, they're 65 years old and need to start withdrawing for retirement. They don't have time to wait for full recovery. What I find particularly frustrating is how common it is for people to set their 401k investments once when they start a job and then never look at them again. Vanguard research shows that approximately 25% of 401k participants have never changed their investment allocation since initially enrolling. Their investments are a snapshot of a decision they made years or even decades ago, with no adjustment for changes in age, risk tolerance, or retirement timeline. The fifth mistake is failing to consider the tax consequences of 401k contributions and withdrawals, particularly the failure to utilize Roth 401k options when they would be beneficial. Traditional 401k contributions are made with pre-tax dollars. You get a tax deduction now, but pay taxes on all withdrawals in retirement. Roth 401k contributions are made with after-tax dollars, no deduction now, but all withdrawals in retirement are completely tax-free, yet only about 20% of participants with access to a Roth 401k option actually use it. Let me show you the math. You're 30 years old in the 22% federal tax bracket. You contribute $10,000 to a traditional 401k, saving $2,200 in taxes now. Over 35 years at 7% returns, that $10,000 grows to $107,000. When you withdraw it in retirement, you pay taxes. If you're in the 24% bracket in retirement, you pay $25,680 in taxes, netting $81,320. Alternatively, you contribute $10,000 to a Roth 401k. You don't get the $2,200 tax deduction now, but the $10,000 still grows to $107,000, and when you withdraw it, you pay zero taxes. You keep the entire $107,000. The Roth strategy nets you $25,680 more. a 31.5% advantage. The Roth advantage is even larger if you're young and in a low tax bracket now, but expect to be in a higher bracket in retirement. Someone who's 25 earning $50,000 in the 12% federal bracket, but who will eventually earn significantly more and retire with substantial income should absolutely use Roth contributions. They're paying 12% tax now to avoid paying 22%, 24%, or even higher tax rates later. What I find so troubling is that financial advisors and 401k providers generally default to recommending traditional pre-tax contributions without doing the analysis to determine whether Roth would be better. The traditional advice is take the tax deduction now, but this is often wrong for younger workers and for people expecting income growth. Let me be very direct about the action steps you need to take immediately. Step 1. Verify you're getting the full employer match. Log into your 401k account right now. Check your contribution rate. Find out what your employer's match formula is. If you're not contributing enough to receive the maximum match, increase your contribution rate immediately. This is the highest return move you can make. Step 2. Audit your fees. Look at every fund you're invested in. Find the expense ratio for each fund. If you're paying more than 0.20% for index funds or more than 0.50% for target date funds, switch to the lowest cost options in your plan. This single change could be worth $100,000 or more over your career. Step 3. Review outstanding loans. If you have a 401k loan, make a plan to pay it off as quickly as possible. If you're considering taking a loan, explore every alternative first. Only use a 401k loan as an absolute last resort. Step 4. Check your asset allocation. Look at your current investments. Are they appropriate for your age and risk tolerance? Consider a target date fund aligned with your expected retirement year. These automatically adjust allocation as you age. Step 5. Evaluate Roth contributions. If you're under 50 and in the 22% federal bracket or lower, seriously consider switching some or all future contributions to Roth 401k if your plan offers it. If you're in the 12% bracket, Roth is almost certainly the right choice. What I want to leave you with is an understanding that these 5 mistakes cost the average American worker somewhere between $150,000 and $500,000 over a career. That's not a theoretical maximum. That's the actual calculable cost based on real contribution patterns, real fee structures, real loan data, and real tax rates. The difference between those who contribute enough to get full match, minimize fees, avoid loans, maintain appropriate allocation, and optimize taxes versus those who don't is staggering. We're talking about 2x or 3x differences in final retirement balances despite similar incomes. The good news is that unlike market returns which you can't control, these mistakes are entirely within your control. You can fix them today. The earlier you do this, the more dramatic the impact. But even if you're 50 or 55, fixing these mistakes now is still worth tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Don't let financial illiteracy cost you your retirement security. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.